Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much for staying back. I hope this will be going to be an exciting panel discussion. They call it a hot debate. The question is, should urban transformation be gradual or disruptive? So let me first introduce myself. My name is Scott Chin. You can call me KC. And I have been involved with smart cities for quite a long while, since 2011 when IBM had their Smarter City Challenge from 2011 to 2013. And it was also during that time that I managed to be involved with the Smart Nation and the ASEAN Smart Cities Network. So right now I'm a consultant for cities and national government, and also a part-time lecturer and visiting professor. So with me today, my esteemed fellow speakers and panelists. On my left is Duncan, and I will ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves, and also what is their role in regards to urban transformation, right? So with Duncan, Professor Jamal, and Dr. Non, I will start the session by asking each of them to introduce themselves, what they do today, and what is their involvement with the topic of discussion on urban transformation. So Duncan, please.
Thank you, Casey. So I'm Duncan Cave. I'm with an organization called Think City. We're based in Malaysia. And we were established back in 2009. And that was following the declaration of Georgetown and Penang and Malacca as World Heritage Sites, UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And the federal government in Malaysia wanted to give some money to those two cities to help kickstart the regeneration of those two cities in recognition of the World Heritage Site status. And in 2009, Khazanah, which is the sovereign wealth fund of Malaysia, it's a bit like the Temasek here, it set up Think City in Georgetown. And with the idea of what can we do to turn Georgetown into a city that people want to invest in. And our thought was that if we make it a city that's very livable, that people want to live in, investment will follow talent. And so we started off by giving small grants to people, just community members, to do things like do up the facade of their shop house, of their heritage buildings. And then we added to things like with management initiatives, where we could see a gap that wasn't being filled by either the private sector or by government, maybe because people don't recognize it as there being a need, or there isn't the funding. So it might be books on the city or on the state that we would help publish those. And this all went very, very well in Georgetown. And in 2015, Khazanah asked us to open offices in Kuala Lumpur and in Johor Bahru, which we have done. And my role personally is that I'm with the Think City Institute, which is the advocacy and capacity building arm of Think City. So we're out there trying to build best practice amongst, let's call them city makers. So people in local government, but also in private sector, planners and architects.
Thank you, Duncan. Next is Professor Jamal from Malaysia. Introduce yourself and what is your specific role with regards to urban transformation. Professor Jamal, please.
Okay, thank you, Casey. So my name is Jamaluli Abdullah. So I'm currently with two roles in the academic as professor in urban planning, as well as the deputy vice chancellor of UITM. In practice in planning, I've been involved with various consultancy and projects related to urban transformation, and one of them with Think City. There was almost 10 years ago in Georgetown, developing a plan for the Muslim enclave. I think as we all know, in Georgetown, it's majority are Chinese, but there's a small enclave where small Muslim community live there, and like really how we're going to revive that community. So that's one of them, and the others more with the local authority. Example now it's like we are involved with the plan for economic development plan for Kuala Lumpur. Now that many industries have moved out, what we should do by the parliamentary district and within Kuala Lumpur area, and also in Putrajaya we have the tunnel that when Tun Mahathir planned the tunnel last time, planned Putrajaya, there's supposed to be a tunnel and there was like land allocated for that, but now the government kind of the thinking like they don't have money to build it, and as well as not much demand. So we are also helping to transform that tunnel into something which can be used for the community.
Thank you, Professor Jamal. And next, my friend, Dr. Non from Thailand.
Oh, hi. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Casey. First of all, if you, my friend, you call me Non, right? Because otherwise you stumble upon my last name, which is impossible to pronounce. It's Akarapasatkun, by the way, but please never call me by that name. I mean, I pronounce it incorrectly and spell it wrong just this morning when I passed through immigration myself. Anyway, I work for DIPA, which is Digital Economy Promotion Agency of Thailand, and we are the hub for smart city promotion in the country. We have the role to promote smart cities in 77 provinces, and so far within the past 7 years of the work we have done, we have been able to at least promote the solutions within at least 100 cities around the country. And my role are twofold. One is to actually work with the policymakers, trying to find the right regulations and find the right incentives so that cities know that they are being supported by ways of in-kind support from the government in order to make smart city not just a dream but reality. On the other hand, I also get my hand dirty by going into municipalities and try to use things like design thinking, like ethnographic research methods, to try to find what might be the solutions that could actually make the problems that our cities are dealing with something of the past. So these two combinations of the top-down and bottom-up approach are what we call citizen-centric smart city focus, which has been one of the things that have made us quite successful in the past few years among members of the ASEAN countries.
Thank you, Non. So, as a few of you may know, the ASEAN Smart Cities framework now has 3 strategic outcomes: high quality of life, sustainable environment, and competitive economy. And underneath that is the concept of integrated master planning. And when we look at the 29 cities now in the ASEAN Smart Cities network, most of them are focused in the pillars. So the area of integrated master planning is not often spoken about. So the debate and the question today is when the development of cities in the region and in countries like Singapore and Malaysia, Thailand, and the rest of the ASEAN member states, not much thought has been put into urban planning, urban transformation on a big scale. So I'd like to get your thoughts in your respective countries. I will start with Duncan. I'm familiar with Think City and what they do because of my past interaction with your colleagues. And maybe you can share with us, Think City being the partner to help cities to transform. What is your experience in the last few years? It's relative, of course, right? Whether it's gradual or disruptive is relative. Let's say gradual in the next 3 to 5 years time frame. So what's your experience like in your context of Malaysia in particular? Are they gradual, or do you think it has been disruptive to cities like what you have done in Malacca, in Penang? Maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Casey. I'm just going to back it up slightly, and thinking about the previous panel discussion, and one of the panelists talked about places like London and Paris as being places that people want to go and visit because of the art and the culture. But you've got to understand that those cities were the first to go through the Industrial Revolution. They were the first cities to grow very fast, and it's taken them 200 years to get to where they are now. Kuala Lumpur, where I live, or let's just take take Malaysia. So 50 years ago, the population of Malaysia was about 9 million. It's now 33 million. And it was about 30% urbanized. It's now almost 90% urbanized. It's about 85% urbanized now. So what that means that in the last 50 years in Malaysia, we've had about 25, 26 million people move into cities. Now either they're born there or they've moved outside. Now 26 million people is a huge number in less than a lifetime. And so the pressures on cities in Southeast Asia have been immense because there's such a rapid move into cities, such a rapid growth in urbanization, that the pressure on cities has been immense. And city governments have done the best they can, but often it's not enough because of just a simple lack of resources. So what Think City has tried to do is look at some of the issues and see if there's a way that we can fix some of the problems by reaching out to communities and working with communities. And when you think about it, you think, well, who knows most about what is needed on a particular street? Well, it's the people that work and live on that street. They're the ones who know what the problems are and things like that. So what we have done is reach out to those people, the communities, and then try to act as a bridge between the community and the local government. So I would say that our look at transformation is gradual, but it's also trying to, I don't want to say turn back the clock, but look at what we already have and say that we don't have to demolish all our buildings and build new shopping malls. We have these great assets of shop houses, of beautiful communities in our cities. Let's rescue them, let's save them, let's build them up and make them the focus of our future development.
Okay, so that's interesting, right? From your perspective and the work that you have done, you reckon that the transformation had been somewhat gradual. So let's now move to Dr. Non. I know that last year, when we were together at ICIN in Kawayan City, you presented when the ASEAN Smart Cities Network was formed, you had 3 cities, right? You had Bangkok, Chonburi, and Phuket. So, and then last year you had 3 more cities added to that list. But when you presented in March in Kawayan City, you showed a list of 30 cities that are in the list of your smart cities. So would you consider that disruptive to push them towards, and from the DIPA, your agency angle, how would you consider the development of cities in Thailand? Would you say that it's gradual, or do you think with that sudden number of smart cities, is it disruptive and aggressive? Maybe you share your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I was hoping that it would be a hot debate, so I was ready for something very hot. But turns out it's a kind of nice and friendly talk, which is fine as well. But Duncan, I know you can be very fierce. So come up with something hot, and we can debate about it. Anyway, the point is, I really like the Casey question. So first of all, I believe wholeheartedly that this transformation should be fast enough so that it can accommodate needs, but should also be strategically gradual enough to be able to test the ideas. Because if you are too fast without knowing what you're doing, then you're going to fail big as a result. And we see this all across the world, in ghost towns or in places whereby you see a lot of smart poles that nobody gets to use because people don't have the devices or don't have the capability to use them, right? So these are things that are too fast, and the decision makers made decisions without thinking about the kind of gradualism that would enable them to actually test out whether or not their solutions would be appropriate for the citizens. So in Thailand, we have learned a lot. We have learned the hard way in many projects that we've done in the past that we think big, we do big, and we fail big. So ever since we step back and then we do it differently. We think big, but then we take small steps. And every steps are learning processes. And we prototypes along the way. If it's working well, we scale it up. If it doesn't work, we scale it back. If it doesn't work at all, we go back to drawing boards. No more, not a lot of risk involved because we are doing it in small steps. So for us, even though it is nice if you're very certain about something that doing big things would be very benefiting to a lot of people, but given our limited resources, given our limited time, doing gradually, it's a much more better approach for us at the moment.
Thank you. And to the last speaker, Professor Jamal, there is a certain cultural context and because of the multiracial society of Malaysia, right, has this cultural context and the nature in which the politics are determined in Malaysia, has an influence to the development of your urban redevelopment and transformation in Malaysia and in your experience with the Malaysian market? And a second question being, how do you think they are sort of ramping up the young leaders of Malaysia to prepare for that? So what are your thoughts with regards to the racial and religious and cultural context of Malaysia? How has that impacted the urban transformation and the development of youth leaders? And you've been a professor in the university there.
Thank you, Casey, on that. Before I get into the kind of the impact of the race and then religion in Malaysia, basically I like to kind of to explain about the planning system in Malaysia. That is basically example of Kuala Lumpur. Now Kuala Lumpur is doing its local plan until 2040. Okay, and I used to be involved in local plan for 2020, there were 63,000 representation, and people want to be heard. There are certain issues with the draft plan, and I was appointed by the mayor to be to represent him, to listen to all of this, and I was based in KL City Hall for 6 months. Now we are doing for KL local plan for 2040. In the plan, it's basically land use. And so it's a land use, what's going to be the land use in the next 40 years, next 20 years until 2040, and what is the plot ratio and things like that. So we have this document to guide us to do it. Okay. So maybe the plot ratio now, maybe the zoning is for that piece of land, maybe is industry. But in 2040, it's going to be commercial or mixed use. So everybody is already know what it's all about, because for the plan, we take maybe 2 years and then we show it to the public, things like that. Now, whether it's going to be gradual or disruptive, then that's the implementation. Okay. So the landowner already know, okay, this is what's already planned in the higher plot ratio and the new zoning. When they're ready to do it, then they do it. So whether it's the gradual or disruptive, depending, and that's where the culture comes about. We have a very nice plan for Kampung Baru. Kampung Baru is a Muslim enclave, right? It's only 5 minutes from KLCC. Okay. Sometimes if you go to Kampung Baru, you see all these wooden Malay houses, right? Stone throw from Twin Tower, the KLCC. And then people say, why it's not developed? Okay. So that's when really the culture comes about, and that's where really it's not only gradual, it's what they call stagnant. Because the people there, they are not ready to develop it. Okay, part of the reason is economic, because it is a land that is the agriculture reserve land for the Malays, and then maybe the original owner would have an acre, but then have many kids, and then it passed down to the third generation now, and we already have a small plot which, unless they agree to sell it, then not much you can do that. And you contrast this to another, last time what we had was that at the old railway station, now it's called KL Central. That is disruptive development. Because not many people are there, so the government can move them to another place for a while, and then it was redeveloped. And also another area where there is what is as disruptive is next to University Malaya, was called Kampung Kerinci. Now it's become Bangsa South. Okay, so that is like, so basically in Kuala Lumpur, what you have here is that you have a plan, you know what's going to happen to the place. The socio-culture will determine whether in terms of implementation it's going to be disruptive or gradual. And that's like really in Malaysia, I think you all know that almost everything is politicized, okay, whatever. So urban development also very much politicized. So depending on like who kind of, who's in power and what they want it to happen, okay. So we have to be very, very, when we do the plan, when we do kind of, I mean, bring multi-ethnic society. I remember when I was appointed by the mayor to listen to all of these grouses. There may be, you know, the parliament in Malaysia, so there was like Ceras area, like it's the stronghold of DAP, Democratic Action Party. So the MP there, I mean, as we all know, DAP is basically offshoot of PAP, Singapore. Okay, after Singapore left the federation, it was DAP. So Kuala Lumpur's like, so Kok Wai was the MP for Ceras, and remember that he would come, like the other people when they come and they would do their representation, whether they agree or disagree, maybe one or two, but he would come like his entourage, like 20 of them, really barging into the room, say, wow, I want them to fight with this. So it's very much into that urban development. And then, so you start to see like different, it's quite interesting, like if you are interested in the politics of urban development, like certain segment, like the Malays, they are kind of doing like, the style is different, okay? So the Chinese, depending which political party, if it is MCA, Malaysian Chinese Association, they go behind the back door and they will negotiate. If you go for like DAP and they are really gung-ho and they say, okay, we'll fight for this one. And then the same with other parties. So political inclination, your ethnicity, and then kind of and then your income, we have like B40, M40, and T20. It's based on the income. They all have like different values, different way of doing that. And a town planner in Malaysia, like you have to really understand the values of these people, and then when you do the plan, and we have to look at that. And of course, we all know that Malaysia have like the new economic policy where they want the Bumiputra like to get 30% of the wealth, which still ongoing. We still now it's only like 19%. So we have all of these things that we need to consider in urban development, especially now. We know that city is the wealth creation. Like we used to be like the nation of Southeast Asia would compete for investment, like Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia would compete, and Vietnam. But now is more of the city. So that's why the plan, KL Plan 2020, is more looking at how we can make KL competitive. Especially KL being in between Bangkok and Singapore, which have better connectivity. So how we're going to make it something like that we can compete. Like I was talking to Xiao Yong just now, he was mentioning about Taylor Swift like coming to Singapore, and like all the other like, and like Singapore monopolized, and then so there's a talk of the like in Bangkok and KL, why would Singapore monopolize? Like, and then Xiao Yong was saying, well, it's commercial decision. So it's quite interesting, like among the cities of Southeast Asia, like we're using the cities really as like a way of to attract investors as economic development. So back to your second question, in the university, like how we do that. So we try to get our students, because it used to be Planning in Malaysia, we got it from the British. I think perhaps Singapore is the same like that. So we follow, you have the structure plan. I mean, you have a national physical plan for the whole of Malaysia, and then you have the state structure plan, and then you have district local plan, and you have the spatial area plan, like 4 levels of them. So we follow the British system, but the British have already changed their plan to a different one. But we are still based on that. So it's kind of too much on the land use and the physical plot ratio and things like that. So the new one is that we try to inculcate among the younger planners that you have to go beyond that. Look at the environment, look at the social, you need to understand the values of the people you are serving. So like we are planning for the people what the people want. So that's how we do that. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you. So I hope to have this sustained engagement with our participants in this particular session. I asked the last question. Can I have Duncan to let us know either or, should urban transformation be gradual or disruptive? Okay, you choose one. And what are the less, it cannot be in between, right? This is the debate. So you choose one. And then share with us maybe 2 important lessons from your experience to why you say so. And the third area is to say, what do you think the audience here could work with you and perhaps collaborate with you? Over to you, Duncan.
So I've got to remember 3 things.
Which one?
Okay. All right. Gradually disruptive. How about that? No? I'm going to come back to something Jamal said as the reason for choosing gradual. The trouble with disruptive change is that there's unintended consequences unless you're very, very, very good at planning. So Jamal mentioned KL Central, which was, it's a transport-oriented development. There's a lot of office buildings, probably 10, 15 office buildings. There's a transport hub that's got the train from the airport. It's got MRT, it's got LRT, it's got the monorail. And then there's some housing there as well. And there's, of course, a shopping mall. And this has been built on, I think it was the what I would call the shunting yards, where the trains are sort of stored, right? About maybe 25 years ago, something like that. Right next door is a place called Brookfields, which is actually quite a historic part of KL. In 1880 or thereabouts, KL burnt down, I think, for the 3rd time. And so the colonial government said, right, we're going to mandate that everything has to be built in brick. So Brookfields is where the bricks were made, about 1 or 2 kilometers to the south of what was then central Kuala Lumpur. And KL was built with these bricks. This is a sort of Little India place. It's an Indian community, Brookfields. You've got a lot of traditional Indian businesses there. You've got an ashram. You've got some great restaurants and things like that. Once you've built KL Central, this transport-oriented development, all the property on the other side of the road where Brookfields is now under pressure for development. People see all these offices going up, and they're thinking, okay, I can buy up 5 or 6 shop lots and then build some sort of high-rise building. So if you're disruptive, you have unintended consequences that are unintended. And I think if we look back over the last, say, 10 years, we've had Donald Trump come into power in 2016. We had Brexit. And look more locally, we had all the events in Hong Kong, was it 2019? All this unrest, I think, is caused by people being dissatisfied, disaffected by the world around them. And there's been such change over the last 30 years, economically and socially, that some people are feeling left behind. And I think people feel that society has become disruptive to their daily lives. And I think if we go about city planning in a disruptive manner, we're just going to disaffect more and more people.
Okay. And Dr. Non, what do you think? Gradual or disruptive? Best practices, lessons learned, and how would others would collaborate with your organization?
I've been thinking that should it be gradual or abrupt rather than disruptive, because I hear what Duncan was saying, that something could be gradually disruptive as well. It took us I think 10 years for us to move from film camera to digital camera. It's gradual. As the chips are cheaper, as the memory cards are more affordable, people are moving towards digital camera rather than film camera, right? So it's gradual, but at the end it's disruptive. So I think the question should be rephrased as, should it be gradual or abrupt, right? In a sense, I can see that there are two sides of this coin. One is that I think it should be gradual because people have to be familiarized with whatever you introduce to them. So in training people to use the tools that you are giving to them, or to use something that is so new that they never have done before, I think that has to be gradual because our brains are still the same brain of Homo sapiens, 200,000 years ago. We're not going to have any faster brain within the next few millenniums, right? So in a sense, it has to be gradual when it comes to training people to use the new kind of tools. But when it comes to solutions, that could be abrupt because if you introduce something that is obviously much more valuable or much more convenient than the one that people used to have. If one day Bangkok, for instance, all know about how traffic congestion has been haunting Bangkok for the past 3 decades. If tomorrow we're going to have a new subway lines that can carry people from suburbs to the city, everybody's going to love it. It can be abrupt in that sense as well. So in a sense, I think we have to kind of think about gradual in how our behaviors can be adjusted to the new solutions we are introducing, and can be abrupt in the sense that it could actually take away or eliminate problems that are haunting a certain place. So it can be both at the same time. But if I have to choose one, I'm more a gradual guy because I believe that at the end of the day, Thailand doesn't need Taylor Swift so quickly. I thought that was a debate topics we have here. I think we could have Taylor Swift at some point, but I guess right now people are adjusting themselves to learning about new types of music. So at one day, people wouldn't just go to Taylor Swift just because I wanted my pictures on Instagram with Taylor Swift in the background. I want because I love her music and I love her lyrics, right? So I think that's a good metaphor for how we think about how we actually match people with the solutions we try to introduce to them.
Thank you. While I ask Professor Jama, you can ask questions. I have 2 questions so far. Please feel free to ask questions. Professor Jama, please. Your thoughts in terms of gradual or disruptive? And secondly, lessons learned from your experience. And how would you think people could collaborate with yourself? Go ahead.
Okay. My safe answer, usually based on the context, based like in Malaysian context, there are certain places that is going to be, like Dr. Non was saying, that abrupt. Okay, abrupt when the development in Bangsa South, in KL, and in which is need to be developed fast, or during the Commonwealth Games 98, so it was developed fast. But for the others, generally, it should be gradual. Okay, for the other part of the city, I'm more inclined for the gradual, simply because like the city have been growing for like hundreds of years. So gradually they keep, and then the people start living. It's been living there for generations, and then if there's something that we need to do, then we have to do it today physically it's easy. But then when you have displaced the people and then they are uprooted from the development, then it's going to create social problem. And one example is like in KL, we build a lot of these highways, and then we split the communities, okay, through the building of these highways. And this is like abrupt development, which somehow the people are really powerless, really to go against that. So I would say gradual is a better way moving forward based on urban transformation.
So considering that this is a hot debate, it seems that the motion for gradual has won, right? But if we recall, COVID was disruptive, right? It was disruptive.
And abrupt as well.
And abrupt.
Yeah.
So that really should put questions to our mind. Should urban transformation as it is should be disruptive or gradual? If you are gradual in preparing for COVID, then I think the population will suffer in that sense. So there has to be some foundation on how urban transformation should take place naturally. A good broadband has prepared the population in general for a disruptive event like the COVID. So I would like to spend the last 8 minutes to answer the questions here, 2 questions. First, are smart villages a good gradual approach in bringing about urban transformation and extending inclusivity to more communities? So it's difficult to read, but I read that again, right? So maybe I will ask Non, because there seems to be more villages in Thailand. You are a bigger population. Smart villages a good gradual approach in bringing about urban transformation in Thailand to have a more inclusive community.
Yeah. Well, 30% of Thai populations are living in the rural area. So 30 to 40% of people in Thailand are living in villages. And they engage on a daily basis with agricultural activities, and many of them are living under poverty line because when they are engaged with agricultural activities, which is low in terms of economic value, they cannot get over the middle income trap. Not let alone that even the threshold between low income and sufficient income. So what we have done in the past was to give them the tools. So for instance, we have a farmer in the northeastern part of Thailand where we give them the tools of the digital platform. So for instance, one farmer that I worked with for the past 6 years, at the beginning when I first met him, he was living under poverty line, but even though his products, the rice that he produced is one of the best rice I have ever tested. It's aromatic, it's nutrient rich, it's one of the best quality products I've ever seen in terms of rice. But then again, with that, he was not able to sell his rice beyond the border of his village. So at the end, he lived under poverty line and he couldn't hire anyone, and he eventually had to even rent the land on which he grow his rice. Until we introduced him the platform where he can put his products produce on the platforms and almost immediately from 1 ton a year that he produced, he was able to sell about 25 tons because the wider audience get access to what he has in terms of supply. More demands are coming through him. So last time I checked, about 6 months ago, he was able to actually escape from poverty. He was able to actually bought his land. He has 6 employees. He also was able to repackage his produce, rice, and then sell it overseas into different countries. And last time I checked, he just bought a second Tesla. Just kidding, he didn't buy it. But the point is, I think at some point he'll get there, right? So I think giving the person the right tools, in this case, this farmer who actually have one of the very good products, but without the accessibility from the outside, so there's no demand, able to meet his supply. So when the right tools in the right hand, I mean, the sky is a limit. And that's why I believe that sure, smart village is one of the ways to give people the right access to the market. And once the market kicks in, that person can actually work with the mechanism that market provides and are able to actually do more with less.
Okay, thank you. Now, I will also address this question with the example of West Java, right? The regional headquarters is in Bandung, and I know the previous head of the West Java digital office, and he has the digital village program, incubate innovations and with startups and have critical mass in which they grew entrepreneurs out of that. So I think that is a good model. Second question, maybe more for Duncan. What efforts are being taken in your respective country, and I would say Malaysia, to ensure that while urban transformation scales up, the environment is also safeguarded, especially when you do your transformation of old cities? How would you factor in the environment in your planning?
In Malaysia, we're not doing nearly enough. I would say that climate change isn't going to happen to Malaysia. That's the feeling. But if you live in KL, as I do, you can actually feel the city is getting hotter. I mean, it's many days it's really unbearable. What Think City is doing, we understand that the environment is vital. It's vital for purely selfish reasons. Don't care about the animals and the birds and the bees and things like that. Just from a human perspective. A city that has, or a street, let's say a street, that has a lot of greenery on it, it actually increases your well-being, not only psychological well-being, your mental well-being, but also your health. People that live in a very green city are actually healthier. And I saw this very interesting study that was done a number of years ago in the US, and they had people staying in a hospital, and one side of the building looked out over the car park, and one side looked out over a garden. And the people that were in the rooms that looked out over the garden, they were, what's the opposite of admitted? Discharged quite significantly earlier than the people that looked out over the car park. Having the greenery actually helped them get better faster. What Think City is doing is we're doing what we call nature-based solutions, looking at how we can improve our city's resilience in terms of climate change, flooding, and heat island effect and things like that, by planting more trees and having green corridors and things like that. But as a whole in Malaysia, we're not doing nearly enough, and it's a shame.
Okay, thank you. Now I have an interesting question from Xiao Yong. Have panelists seen political dynamics disrupted gradual transformation? Would disruptive transformation be better to attain the desired outcomes? Back to my question about my point about COVID, right? So, but this is about political dynamics. So I open this up to anyone who would like to respond to that. Do you think the political dynamics would disrupt gradual transformation?
Well, the answer is yes, right? The political dynamics disrupt everything. There are cases whereby we were doing something really great, and we hope that it will become something that is pretty nice within the 5-6 years. But then a politician came along and said, well, we want it to be done in 1 year because of the profits they can make from the project. So we have to speed up the project from 5. We have to do it in 1 year, and turns out when the project was finished, it was not as good as we thought. So of course, it would happen if the politicians comes in without the understanding that for us, it's a long-term perspective on how we can make things sustainable. But for them, it's a quick win so that they can cash out as soon as they can. Right? So I think the sweet spot that we have to find is how to get all the stakeholders, including politicians, to actually believe in the long-term perspective as much as the short-term cash that they can gain from the system as well.
So there's one last question before we end the session. Can Dr. Non share how do you tap on the energy of your youth and enterprises in the development of your smart city?
I mean, as in my youth, or is it like young people in Thailand? I'm not young anymore, so
I think you're younger than among the four of us.
On this floor, I'm honored to be part of this panel. Well, I think so. I think a lot of people in Thailand are working with us. Actually, last year we have a program called Smart City Ambassadors, whereby we brought in 150 fresh graduates across Thailand, and we trained them so that they can use their youth energy and, of course, the skill that they train them with in order to help their cities that they come from. And we paid them with salary and giving them even more skills that they ask for. Towards the end, we have about 1/3 of which who are actually now working for the city as the junior CTO of cities, working side by side with the mayors. So I think the youth energy is very important because not only they're born with a smartphone in their hands, but they are also very good at doing things really quick and are able to comprehend a large amount of data to make better decisions than the previous generation who might be relying on biases and prejudice.
So maybe our time is up. So I'd like to maybe have the panelists to say your last sentence or phrase as a concluding remark of this panel session. Maybe I start with Professor Jamal. Go ahead.
I like kind of relate to Xiao Yong's question, political dynamics, and we just have to look at in Malaysian case. for a city. Then you know who's behind it, and then see what happened for a city now. 100 billion ringgit development, which has gone south. And quite interesting as well as in Sarawak. Malaysian agreement, MA63. So we had the politician, the late Adnan Satim was really pushed for the independence of Sarawak, like to get more money, things like that. And then followed by the current Premier of Sarawak, Abang Johari. And Sarawak now is really they really push of the development really fast on that. So those are the two examples of political dynamics, like how they influence urban transformation. Of course, earlier during Tun Mahathir, that's where we got all this rapid development in KL with the KLCC and then with the LRT and all sort of thing and Commonwealth Game facilities. So political dynamics really play a big role, especially in urban transformation of cities in Malaysia.
Thank you. Duncan, last
Very
phrase.
quickly, even though I'm advocating that we do our urban transformation gradually, that doesn't mean that it's not innovative. And I think what we need is innovative transformation.
And Non?
Yeah, I think if we work backward, so what I'm saying is that we have to start with what the demands are, and then we work backward to the solutions. We always, if we do it that way, either it's gradual or abrupt, it's always going to work. But if we start with a solution, we have lots of startups in Thailand who are starting with the solution. They have great ideas, and they said, well, I'm going to do this, and everybody going to love it. So they start with a solution, and they try to get people, try to force customer to buy it. Turns out that's not the way it works. So what we're trying to do is that, well, let's start with the real demands. What is it that people really need? If it's urban transformation, then be it. Make it as abrupt as we need it to be. If it's not about the abruptness of building new cities, but the gradual change of cities from heritage town into a heritage town with technology, then gradual is the way, right? So if you start with the demands and the resources that we have and work backward, the solutions will be the right one, whether it's abrupt or gradual.
Thank you so much. And please thank our panelists for this exciting panel session. Thank you.